Why, hello there, Nice Tail here. I hope this video finds you well, and I hope you're having a good day, or your day gets good after this video. Maybe it's the portent of good tidings. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. Today I'm bringing you a full review. This is going to be a longer one. It's a full review. The summaries are the shorter ones. Of this VDK Knives Vice, and you wouldn't probably be in the minority if you said you'd never seen or heard of this knife before, or VDK Knives. Apparently they've done some stuff before that even I hadn't been aware of, and I honestly wasn't aware of this knife until I saw it on sale one time from Blade HQ, and then it popped up on Blade Binge, where I got it for a pretty good price, actually. This is an interesting knife, and there's a lot to talk about here. But before that, let's get the specs out of the way. As usual, as this is a full review, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. It would help me grow and hopefully bring better content in the future. And more content, of course. Over 3 7/8, just under 4 inches. So this is like a 3.85 inch blade. 8 3/4 overall. 4 7/8 on the hand. Actually, I guess it would be like a 4.9 inch blade and like 3.9 inch blade and 4.85 handle. Yeah, something like that. Let's make a comparison so I can stop just randomly throwing numbers around and give you something a little more concrete to know what you're looking at. It's not a small knife, though. Just simple as that. Small knife is a Weiss VV Elementum. And full-size knife is this VV Conspirator. As you can plainly see, this is larger than both of them by a considerable margin. And if you can't compare to those, here's a nice comparison for exactly how much grip length you're going to have with 2 AA batteries. You have slightly more than 2 AA batteries, honestly, in grip length in, well, really the only place you can grip this knife on, though it is relatively neutral. One thing this knife is not, however, is relatively thin. The titanium is pretty thick here. It is thicker than the Conspirator. And, yeah, at its tallest, it is considerably taller than the Conspirator. It has a big old poon on the front end of this thing, and it makes it quite tall. Let's get weight going with the scale. I can't imagine this is going to be a particularly light knife. There is a decent amount of 5 ounces. That's a little 5.15 ounces, but that's a little bit less than I honestly thought it was going to be. This is a large knife with a big mass of steel and very thick titanium scales. So that's actually not bad for the size of this knife. And the feeling of mass that you got. Thickness. Yeah, 600 thousandths. This is considerably thicker than a lot of knives. Blade stock, 160 thousandths. Also quite thick. Behind the edge, despite that, is not terrible. It's not super thin, mind you, but actually it is pretty darn thin. That's got to be a pretty high edge angle, but it is 10 thousandths, apparently, approximately, about out of the box. I would probably lay that back a little bit, so you're probably looking closer to 15 thousandths. It's not got a huge tall grind, and it's not a hollow or anything. So it will get thick quickly, but, I mean, it does come down to a thin edge. It's a decent edge, and it's got a little bit of gunk on it from a little bit of use, but it's pretty good there. Hardware check. That, I believe, is a T8, right? Yes, it is. T8 body screw, T8 pocket clip screw, T8 lock pivot screw. So this is T8 all around. It's basically just 3 screws you really have to interface with. There may be some more underneath there's probably another one underneath the carbon fiber, maybe. Yeah, it looks like there's one right there. You can kind of see this. Or that might just be a bar for stabilization. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't taken the entire thing apart, mind you, but the pocket clip screw is not holding anything together, so it would be just this and possibly one more. Though you would definitely have to take out everything on this side to get at the one, if there is another one under there. That ends it for your basic specs. So, specs done. I do that for myself, so I know when to put the timestamps. Alright, so, let's take an actual talk about this knife. What are we looking at? This is M390 blade steel. It's got kind of like a hazy stonewash blade on there. As you can see, there's a big sort of raptor claw poon kind of thing going on here. It is quite large. You can definitely get up there. It certainly has its utility. Overall, the blade shape is sort of a Wharncliffe style blade with some curvature, so a modified Wharncliffe. Easy access to the tip, good slicing, got that curve, but should be straight enough to push through some things. Yeah, it's a pretty utilitarian blade shape in all honesty. There is no jimping on the blade whatsoever anywhere other than this flipper tab. And as you can see, the flipper tab is very low profile. In fact, it kind of sinks into the handle a little bit. So you might, if you don't just want to like push button it, which you can totally do, by the way, you can sort of wrap around and get in there a little bit more, and the light switch works well. Honestly, it's a surprisingly good flipper tab. It doesn't look like it would be great. The jimping doesn't look right, like it's the optimal kind of jimping, but it's got a pretty severe angle to it. So you got something to hold grip onto. And yeah, the D10's good despite this heavy blade. No complaints there. I do have a slight complaint about the plunge grind and sharpening tool, as you can see, there's already kind of like basically they took it back so far that it got a little bit of that like recurve sticking out nub. Honestly, just a sharpening tool right there would be nice. However, it's not a big deal. The stop pin is way up there, so you can cut in one if you want when you get to sharpening it if it starts going into a smile, which it will almost immediately if you're not careful. Or you could just cut in that small choil when you could keep it pretty small on this one, honestly. But the plunge grind kind of drops right down to the back of the edge. It's not ideal, but it's also not terrible. It keeps a very kind of uniform look on this one. I'm not going to complain because it can be easily rectified. It is on bearings, and as you can see, it's pretty darn smooth. I don't know if that's partially because the blade is relatively heavy. In fact, yeah, the blade is reasonably heavy. Actually, the balance point's not that bad for being this heavy. I guess that's partially why they... Come on now. Oh, wow, this one was fighting me. There you go. The balance point's not too bad. Probably why they put so much mass into these titanium scales back here to keep it a little bit more balanced. But yeah, as you can see, I mean, it's just about drop shut. If I were to, it's probably a little dry from being in the pocket, but if I were to put a little tiny bit of oil on the D10 ball, just like touch a Q-tip, or, well, Q-tips don't really fit in there, but I have, where are they? Oh, here they are. I use these little... This one's a Chinese multi-pack from Amazon, but you can find all different kinds of them. It's sort of just like a little foam kind of applicator or swab, I guess. And you just put a tiny bit of oil on there and you touch that or rub that onto the lock bar, or the D10 ball, sorry, not the lock bar. Don't rub anything onto the lock bar. We don't need oil on the lock bar. You need a tiny bit of oil on that D10 ball, which is right there, which this thing also has a lock bar insert that is steel, so it's steel on steel. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. It would probably be just a straight drop shut, but a pretty controlled one. It's surprisingly good. It's got really good feel whack to it. I already talked about the stop pin, so no reason to go there. Lock bar access is not the greatest. they did chamfer it down a little bit, but mostly because it's such a wide blade stock, it's really easy to get there, and you pretty much can come from the side. So while it's not like the best design, if you're going to do it when you're going to put some mass in there so you have a decent amount of room in between the two scales, so it never ends up really getting tight. Did that make any sense whatsoever? Basically, when you have two scales that are real close to each other, you have to have lock bar access sticking out because it's tight to get in between the two scales. This one, you've got a decent amount of room despite these thick scales because of how thick the blade stock is. So with just a little chamfer, you can easily get access. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, there we go. There is no internal milling on the scales inside. As you can see, it's just a flat. But you can also see that the carbon fiber inlaid into this thing is reasonably thick. It's pretty deep, and that's probably where the most, it's definitely where 90% of the weight reduction's coming from. Yeah, it's reasonably thick carbon fiber stuck in there. The scales, the carbon fiber scales, are contoured lightly, in fact, very nicely contoured, just a little bit. Doesn't seem to be a contour on the actual handle, but I mean, it doesn't need to be. It's just the scales, which is fine. There is a backspacer. It's got a little bit of sort of gearing kind of thing. The blade to handle ratio is actually quite good, quite long. It was centered. It is it still centered? Yes, I believe it is. Pretty darn centered. There is no play. It is centered. Everything is quite solid and quite well done here. There's a nice chamfer around the entire edge of the titanium. Everything's really kind of softened, even the titanium. And one thing I have to say is the inside of the titanium is softened as well, which is a very nice thing to do because, well, you're going to be interacting with it a little bit more as it's a thick knife. I will say that right here on the lock bar cutout, not chamfered just a little bit. I think the maker of this knife, which we'll talk about in a second, needs to work on that. They do that a lot. This is a pretty good one, and you don't really feel it. You don't really come in contact with it, but it is still a little bit sharp, and I kind of like to see that addressed a little bit more on just knives in general, especially when it's knives that you're going to come in contact with that area, but on this one, it's pretty irrelevant. Titanium milled pocket clip. It is pretty low profile. It's not a very high pocket clip, but it does have good flex. It probably will go in and out of like most pockets. I haven't tried it in super thick pockets or anything like that. It is a little pointy on the end, so like picking it up's a little bit unpleasant, but should be in and out of the pocket. Let's double check. In and out of the pocket, it's pretty good from what I've tested. It's sort of a minimal thing. It's not bad. It's a little tight, but because it's low and everything, but because of that flex, you can get it into most things. It's not super deep carry, mind you. It's sort of middle depth, and honestly, because it tapers the way it does, there's not a lot to grab onto here. However, weirdly enough, the lanyard hole, in my opinion, has a kind of a use on this knife. There is, of course, a lanyard hole. It is actually not being prioritized over the clip, for those of you who want that, which is nice, but when you grip onto this thing, the placement of the lanyard hole with how thin this thing is, you kind of like tug onto the lanyard hole, at least I do. Like if I push into it, let's see. Yeah, see? My finger kind of indents in there. It almost actually provides a little bit of extra traction. It's not hard to get out of the pocket, just a little tight getting in because of just how low it is. But it will work, you just force it a little bit. Of course, you have to be willing to carry this size and weight of a knife in general, but Alright, now, who makes this knife for VDK Knives? This is a Chinese OEM knife by We Knives. Actually, I'm going to put a little tiny bit of that oil that I just talked about on myself. Here, let's just do a demonstration here. Where is my oil? Tiny bit of nano oil. Literally that tiny little bit on there. Doesn't take much. Just sort of rubber in there. work it in a little bit. You know what? It's a little dry in there. It's going to get a little bit more directly from the applicator. I don't normally do this, but hey, what the heck. I didn't even get a dollop. I just used what was already on the outside of the There we go. Yeah, I could feel a little bit of... Yep, okay. It's drop shot. In fact, it's very drop shot. Still pretty controllable, though. And like I said, I didn't even put a dollop. I just used what was still on the outside of that little end of the applicator. So it takes very, very little. Normally, just a little bit on this can get it, but I felt like there was a little bit of something in there. Where was I? Ah, yes, We Knives. Yes. We Knives is definitely the company that can, one of the companies that can do a little bit better job on knocking down some of the edges around their lock bar cutout in general. But We Knives makes good knives, and this is a very kind of different one. You don't often see these kind of thick slabs from We, at least not in my experience, and there's a lot of chamfering and contouring going on here. It honestly didn't feel like a We knife, except for one thing, and when I actually unboxed this, someone pointed that out to me. Thank you, someone. I mentioned that the quality of this shred carbon fiber with the blue in it. There's a couple options. There's like a bronze one and a couple different carbon fiber options. Shred carbon fiber is notoriously terrible. This kind of looking shred carbon fiber, it's known for voids out the wahoo. or up the wazoo, or whatever you want to do. Oh god, I'm rhyming. This, on this front side, has no voids. There's a little nick where they put in the screw, but beyond that, no voids on this. And on the other side, there is one or two right there. This is not a void, it's just a little bit of funkiness. It's like tiny pinpoint voids. I think there's about 3 or 4 on there, but they're like super small. This shred carbon fiber is known for big, kind of chunky, ugly voids. I don't typically like shred carbon fiber, but when it looks like this, I can't complain. And when they do use it, tends to do a really good job with it. Much better than a lot of other ones that I've seen. I, in fact, don't have very many shred carbon fibers to compare it to because I don't like the material that much because of those voids. But yeah, this one is, there's like 4 tiny ones on here on one side, and they are about as small as you can get for voids on this kind of material. So, really good execution there. Also, decent amount of blue in there. You don't always get that with this carbon fiber. In fact, I don't know what... This one's got like little specks on it on one side. What is that? Yeah, it's in the carbon fiber. This is like a paint chip or something, I think, that they use for this kind of carbon fiber, so... whatever. It's not my favorite in general, but it does look pretty good on this knife. I'll give it that much. This is also a pretty thick blade and stock and everything for We, considering, well, We's known for thin geometry. This is not quite that. So back to where I was. The only complaint I have about this knife, and I'm not 100% sure where I fall. The knife is expensive. I think the knife is probably more expensive than I want the knife to be. The knife is $390. That's expensive for a premium knife that's this. However, this knife is definitely doing a few things that a lot of comparable knives aren't. Lately, We's pricing has gotten a little bit high on some of their models, tending to come in around $370 anyway, but this is first an OEM knife, so that's going to add a price point. It's got a big chunk of M390 comparative to what, well, a lot of other companies put out at this price. I mean, that's 160 thousandths blade stock with that big of a blade. It's also got contouring and inlays and carbon fiber work and pretty thick slabs of titanium. So I can definitely see more value than a lot of the knives that you see being requested at 350, and OEM knives oftentimes do come in around that 350-ish point. So I don't think it's completely out of the ballpark of where it should be. It just, I'd like to see it a tiny bit cheaper. But I'm also not super upset about it. I did, like I said, get it off Blade Binge for a pretty darn good price of... Did I get this thing for $300, or was it even lower than that? I'm not sure. I think it was $300, but, I mean, yes, definitely at that price point. If you can see it on sale, sure. Blade HQ is the only one that I know offhand. I will look around, but I will link it to Blade HQ and see if I can find it anywhere else. My guess is probably White Mountain Knives. They have a lot of things, but I digress. There is enough here to substantiate right near its price point, because thick amount of material being higher than normal, contouring, the extra steps that have been taken, and the fact that it is an OEM knife, and you of course have to add in price for, you know, another person to get their little taste, right? Which in this case is the person who's ordered the knife from we. So yeah, you be the judge of it. It's a very distinct looking knife. It's got it's very high quality. It's very well executed. It's very unique and interesting, and I really like it, and I've had no issue with it. I've done a decent amount of cutting with it, and it's done pretty well. It has started to lose a little bit of its bite, but honestly, it's definitely still gonna have no problem going through stuff. I'm not really worried about it. It's holding up pretty decently. But yeah, I don't know. Is the price right? It's close for what you're, usually comparing it to, but yeah, that's up to you. The value is really up to you whether you want to like the knife enough to get it, I guess. That's usually the case, right? So, VDK Vice. Maybe watch out for more knives from VDK. Maybe they have if they have a Instagram, I'll link that down below too in the description. But yeah, this is cool. This is different. It's definitely doing its own thing. It's kind of aggressive, kind of utilitarian. I don't know. I like it. So, I'm going to end things here. I've been hemming and hawing in the end here, but I think I did a pretty good job otherwise. I'm relatively happy with that, and I'm never happy with anything I do. so yeah. I'm done. I'm out. See you later. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one, hopefully.